are the bits that we looked at last week, which I've, reviewed and corrected a little bit, not very much, but better to look at this new version. And below that, you'll find another bit from the same book, which is this IBD IBD science reasoning book we've been using all along to get little ideas from. And then there's a bit more from different sources about negative phenomena. So we had a little questions, not last week, but the week before, about negative phenomena, which is very relevant because we are, it comes with the definition of, these non-observation sciences. So you've got to know what a negative phenomena is, and that's what we review. So where did we get to last week? I mean, we were in the middle of looking at this sort of document which says page 69 to 71, right? So I don't think we finished it really, or if we did, we went a bit quickly. We didn't explain anything very much. Maybe I'd like to go back to that. And oh yeah, this is the last class, by the way. I've got to go off to Slovakia to lead a retreat there next. Maybe Czechia, but at least Slovakia. Still hoping to get there. Czechia, maybe Prague, maybe a bit difficult. So we'll be away for a month. So this holiday, and we try to start again when I come back. If the trip to Slovakia is for some reason cancelled, if there's suddenly like stronger restrictions on cross-border travel and everything, I don't know. That's we'll have to see. But at the moment, I'm going just next Monday. Okay, so maybe we should just look at this document where it begins. If you write at the bottom of page 9, it says page 69 to 71. Can you see that? But these are kind of the technical terms and everything just that come up in these rather complicated non-observation signs, a non-observation of the non-appearing type of correct signs. Remember, the non-observation sign has got two types. We did the main definition of non-observation sign in general, and we'll come back to that because we want to talk about negative. We just remind ourselves that later on. But right now we're in the correct non-observation side of the non-appearing, which is the first division, the two divisions, and the other division is correct non-observation sign of the suitable to appear, which is I would say that's the more kind of meaningful, or the more kind of that's the class in which the signs of emptiness appear anyway. The sort of the more common or something type of signs, but Armageddon does does devise this other division of non-observation signs and non-observation signs for the non-appearing, so that he does sort of pull that one out as well and puts that one first, and it has its relevance. It's not kind of just talking about funny things like flesh eaters, but how we should be careful when we are observing people. We might see faults that aren't there, and just because we don't see their good qualities, it doesn't mean the good qualities aren't there just because we don't see them. This is like being aware that things like faults and good qualities of people can be quite hidden. Just because you're a bodhisattva, you don't have to have purple clouds of smoke, or kind of in golden kind of gleam in your eyes. You could look very common, but still be something very special like bodhisattva. So it's always good to be cautious, not to make assumptions about people, that kind of thing. So that'll come up in our kind of in our extracts from this other book as we go through it. And of course, it's all there in Catherine Rogers. If you've got the Catherine Rogers book, Tibetan Logic, she does her best to explain things. Okay, so where did he get to? Well, we're talking about flesh eaters, so that's some type of non-human evil spirit. So they're considered to exist, right? So what the implications of that is, they exist, but can we realize they exist? Some people can realize they exist. Okay, they exist, like say Buddhas realize they exist, or people with clairvoyance. People can see beings beyond our ordinary, human realm seeing of animals and kind of humans, and we can see all those. But these spirits and things are a bit more borderline. We Westerners are kind of not used to thinking about things like spirits and stuff existing. And these cannibal flesh eaters were described, they're sort of not kind of just kind of quite the gross forms of, or they may be gross forms, but they're not gross forms on our wavelength or something, They may have gross form, but they're just not on our wavelength unless they choose to appear to us or something, So a bit mysterious, but in general, according to the Tibetan Indian kind of understanding, they do exist. And Dharmakirti, who's bringing them in his commentary on valid conditions, Indian course, so not just a Tibetan invention. They're sort of accepted in Indian kind of somewhere in the world of the 6 types of different beings. So I guess there'd be hungry ghosts. Which of the 6 classes of sentient beings would you put them in? I guess they have to be some kind of a specialized hungry ghost. We have this idea the hungry ghosts are all those people who go around starving and kind of can never eat some morsel of food. But I mean, if you have these 6 rigid distinctions of different types of being, hell being, hungry ghost, animal in the lower realms, the unfortunate realms, and where do creatures like these local spirits that Tibetans, believe are kind of just inhabiting the places where they live, or the mountains where they live, where do they fit in? And these people like the Nagas, it's quite intelligent beings, but who live under the ocean or inhabit trees or something. What kind of creature actually are they? So it's a bit difficult to fit them into those categories, just by what we think of as an animal usually, or what we think of as a hungry ghost usually. So the Nagas go in the animal realm, and the hungry ghost, these flesh-eating spirits, I guess, go in the hungry ghost realm, even though they do seem to be able to eat plenty of flesh, human flesh. So there's sometimes this division of sentient beings in samsara into 6 rigid classifications seems to be just a bit sort of too fixed, if you take that as being sort of the rigid distinctions. There are some creatures that kind of are in one of those categories but don't really fill the ordinary categorization. Anyway, so okay, they exist. So that's not the question, do they exist or not, but seeing them, if you're just an ordinary being like me, kind of how easy is that? So then we say they're beyond my ken, beyond my wit to understand, beyond my level of understanding. Beyond my ken is a bit sort of not quite such a common word, but although in the north of England, probably people understand you very easily. Not sure about south of England. But anyway, it means that beyond your level of understanding, beyond the lot of your understanding is, if you try to translate it literally to the Tibetan, beyond the capacity of your understanding. So the Tibetan word's a bit difficult to translate, just into English. Gelden the Songwa, beyond the lot of understanding, or the type of understanding that you possess, to see whether that's direct perception or inferential cognition in the context we're talking about. Is the one in front, is the one in this room right now, sort of thing. Okay, so when something is like that, beyond somebody's power of perception or power of deduction, like that, then 4 types, as we described last week. I think we got through these 4 types, either in a very far away place, or they're in very, very distant by way of time, or they're very distant by way of their subtle, or they're very difficult to spot by way of their subtle entity. And the example they gave was here of the subtle particles. Yeah, so if they're tiny atoms, how are we going to be able to see those with our gross eyes? How are we going to feel them with our fingers, because they're too tiny? So that's one way of being subtle. And I thought, well, and then I put in brackets in my last presentation, I sort of very small. Subtle actually means very small. It does in this case, but there's many other cases where subtle doesn't mean very small, because like I think you'd have to put the flesh eaters in this one. They're subtle by way of their entity, not because it's so small, but just as they, they don't have, they don't sort of, appear grossly to our eye consciousness if they don't want to, in the normal form, let's say, they're invisible to us. So subtle in a different way. And like, the karmic connection between, this guy's got a funny shaped nose in this life, is born with a twisted nose, or he's born with, one ear bigger than the other or something. So where did that come from? Well, there's some subtle karmic reason, why he's got that particular odd physical characteristic, or even an ordinary physical characteristic for that matter. There's some reason why he's born with that defect or that kind of, special feature. And so what's the karmic cause of that? Yeah, there's some sort of special karmic deed he did sometime in the past. But only like a Buddha could spot that or something. Only somebody with superb clairvoyance could really make the connection between the karmic deed which produced that particular effect and the effect itself. Well, that's subtle, yeah. So subtle doesn't have to mean just very small. So objects beyond our understanding in that sense. And the last one was beyond one's ken by way of number. So Purbachok doesn't seem to have this one. I looked in Catherine Rogers anyway. She only seems to list the first three. But have you noticed this one in Rogers?
No, it's not in.
Yeah. But, well, it may not be in Purbachok's list, you see. It's not her. It's probably Purbachok's not put it in for whatever reason. But in this Lothling presentation, beyond one's ken by way of number, we just can't say how many are there. The number of insects existing on the ground of a place where one is, for instance. Yeah, so there's just loads and loads of ants running around in the nest, or how many are there? Well, we could never count them even if we spent the rest of life counting them, because how would we ever catch them and find them and count them one by one? So that's different ways of being, too subtle for us, or too difficult for us to realize, so we can't work it out by way of direct perception or inference, the two valid cognizers. So the next bit was, what is the meaning of valid cognizer? What is the meaning of subsequent cognizer? So we've all done a bit of awareness and knowledge on mind and cognition in our time. So, so maybe we don't need to talk about those, except they do come in that the example syllogisms that we read. You have to know the difference between valid cognizer and subsequent cognizer. Valid cognizer is going to be the cause, and the subsequent cognizer can be the effect of that cause. Valid cognizer only the first moment of the realization. Eye conscious realizing part first moment is valid cognizer, and eye conscious realizing part the second moment, third moment in the same continuum, subsequent cognizer. So that's relevant to one of these signs about flesh eater that we looked at by way of example. We come back to. Going to the next paragraph then. Oh yeah, well here you've got the. This is the sign that uses valid cognizer and subsequent cognizer. Of course, we've got to extract some other technical terms. So we've got this very sign I was just talking about here. The subject in the place in front with regard to a flesh eater. So in this room, with regard to this room, in this room with regard to flesh eater. A person for whom a flesh eater is beyond their ken does not develop a factually concordant subsequent cognizer ascertaining the existence of a flesh eater, because with regard to a flesh eater, a person for whom a flesh eater is beyond their ken does not observe a flesh eater with a valid cognizer. Yeah, so that's a kind of, the limit of your kind of sign you can make here. They don't have a subsequent cognizer of a flesh eater because they don't have a valid cognizer of a flesh eater. Okay, so that's not really kind of stunning, but as I say, there is some meaning to these non-appearing signs, non-appearing because of in terms of people's qualities and so forth. So anyway, you can see how that sign is working. The sign, the reason is related to the predicate of the Rabandam, in the sense that there's this cause and effect going on, but because they're all in the negative, it's not a. The relationship is always a relationship of the same nature. Related, there's the same nature. Okay. subsequent cognizer is the effect of the valid cognizer, but the sign no valid cognizer is not an effect of no subsequent cognizer. Yeah, because those are permanent phenomena. So there's no cause and effect relationship with the negatives. So no valid cognizer is not a cause of no subsequent cognizer, and no subsequent cognizer is not a cause of no valid cognizer, you know, because those are two permanent phenomena, negative phenomena. What kind of negative? No subsequent cognizer, absence of a subsequent cognizer. What kind of negative is that? Non-affirming negative, yeah. And non-affirming negatives are always permanent. We'll come to that later on. Yeah, so the relators are the same nature if you get the relation right, you know. The effect has always got to be related to the same nature as the predicate for the probandum, remember? But they're not correct nature signs because they are non-observation signs because they involve a negative in the predicate for the probandum. Yeah. Okay, so what we wanted, what the author's writing it down here for, why is quoting that sign again here, is because he just wants to talk about these special terms that come in the definition, you know. So he wants to give make sure we understand what the object designated as a predicate of the negandum is, and distinguishing that from the predicate of the negandum itself. So the new term, the special term, the complicated term is the object designated as a predicate of the negandum, which isn't the same thing as the predicate of the negandum itself. So this will make sense when we go back to the definitions, I hope. So to give illustrations using, you know, for instance, that sign above, flesh eater is posited as the object designated as a predicate of the negandum, and the predicate of the negandum is the much longer thing, and it's a long sign. So predicate of the negandum we should be able to sort of pick out. It's just you know, just the kind of the long thing that is between the subject and the sign, you know, in the middle. So that's not so brilliantly new to realize that, although it's not talking about the predicate of the probandum here. Now we're talking about the predicate of the negandum because we are refuting something. So the predicate of the negandum itself is, you know, with respect to the flesh eater, a person for whom a flesh eater is beyond their ken, developing a factually concordant subsequent cognizer, ascertain the existence of a flesh eater. Well, that's all that middle bit, basically. But within that, you see, there is the object designated as the predicate of the probandum. So that's a crucial thing, you know, that you are, you know, unable to say, is it there or not, you know. Okay, so that's just trying to kind of distinguish those two for you. With respect to the difference between the two, the object designated as the predicate of the negandum and the predicate of the negandum. The object designated as the predicate of the negandum is the basis for identifying the predicate of the negandum, or the basis of the predicate of the negandum. And the predicate of the negandum is the opposite of the predicate of the probandum. So you're not getting much help there. It's just like, you know, it's a bit of a weak explanation. The one is the basis of the other. Yeah, okay. So this, so the object designated as the predicate of the negandum is flesh eater. So obviously the predicate of the negandum is built around flesh eater. You know, it's kind of, that's the central issue. That's the thing we're all talking about, a flesh eater. The predicate of the negandum is, you know, not, is there a flesh eater there or not? Because, you know, it's more kind of complicated sign than that. Is, can the person, you know, for whom flesh eater is beyond their ken, you know, like, can they develop a factually concordant subsequent cognizer, ascertaining flesh eater or not, you see? That's kind of, you know, the argument. But in the center of that, you know, is this, you know, flesh eater itself. Yeah, so what's the kind of, you know, special feature of this non-observation side of the non-appearing? which distinguishes it, let's say, from the non-observation sign of the suitable to appear, which we haven't really studied, so we're not completely on top of the subject, but just bit by bit. Okay, so you've got a sort of a non-observation sign. Yeah, it's a correct sign with the predicate of the probanda being negative. So then going on from there, on top of that, if flesh eater is not suitable to appear to a valid cognizer of the person for whom the sign, has become the property of the subject in the proof of that, on the flawless subject sought to be known in the proof of that by the sign of it. Yeah. So the person for whom it has become the property of the subject, so the person who realizes the sign on the subject, so this is the correct other party, the correct opponent. Yeah, so it's not suitable to appear to him. It's not suitable to appear to his valid cognition of any kind on This expresses that at a time when the person for whom that sign has become the property of the subject realizes a probandum relying on that sign, if flesh eater, the object designated as the predicate of the negandum, exists upon the flawless subject sought to be known, that person cannot observe it by valid cognition as existent there, and if it does not exist upon the flawless subject sought to be known, cannot observe it by valid cognition as non-existent. So he's unable to say whether it exists or not, simply because it doesn't appear to his valid cognizer of any kind on that subject. So that's it, non-appearing. See, it doesn't appear to the person for whom that sign has become the subject. So that's where they get non-appearing from, yeah. The main difference then, and this is sort of making the distinction between the two types of non-observation sign, then the main difference between non-observation for the non-appearing and non-observation for the suitable to appear. I say non-observation sign for the non-appearing. Catherine Rogers says non-observation sign of the non-appearing. Well, think a little bit about my slightly different translation. Okay, the difference. If it is on the one hand a correct non-observation sign, and also at the time when the correct opponent for that sign realizes a probandum, if the object designated as a predicate of the negandum exists on the flawless subject to be known, it is suitable to appear to their valid cognition as existent there. And if it does not exist there, it is not suitable to appear to the valid cognition as non-existent there. That sign is a correct non-observation sign for the non-appearing. So that's as we've been talking. If it is on the one hand a correct non-observation sign, maybe that should be a correct non-observation sign. And also at that time, when the correct opponent for that sign realizes a probandum, if the object designated as the predicate of the negandum exists upon the flawless subject sought to be known, it is suitable to appear to their valid cognition as existent there. And if it does not exist there, it is suitable to appear to their valid cognition as non-existent there. That sign is called a correct non-observation sign for the suitable to appear. Yeah, so that's complicated, but when we see the examples, I'm sure it'll become much clearer. And the correct non-observation signs for the suitable to appear are much more kind of familiar, or much more kind of easier to make sense of than these non-appearing signs. So just step by step. So this is what I said. The next bit is just freshly translated, so you haven't had that last week. So it's like why are these signs important? They're not just kind of displaying about improving your logic by debating about flesh eaters, which are kind of a bit of a kind of unusual phenomena, not very mainstream, but talking about whether you can see people's good qualities or not, and if you see bad qualities in a person, You know, is it as it appears to you, or are you just kind of, just saying something through, the sort of your own tendency to see faults in people, just sort of a compulsive tendency, which isn't, very good to, just believe in, kind of, sort of stop that tendency in yourself. So next, so this is just carrying on, I think, from the paragraph above in the book. Next, the need for and the main points of practice, the correct non-observation sign for the non-appearing, which are explained in the text on recognition. Yeah. So this is from Dharmakirti. He's the one who has, this seems to be drawn from, maybe Dignaga, I don't know, but certainly Dharmakirti is spoken of in this context. But the quote is from Sutra. A person cannot estimate the measure of another person. If one does so, one will degenerate. Yeah, so it's like, it starts saying like an ordinary person like us. As for this advice for polite good conduct, teachers, it is inappropriate to say another does not have such and such a quality just because it does not appear to you or is not seen by you. And alternatively to say such and such has such a fault, I think it should be, just because it appears to you or you can see it. So that's not enough, just because it appears to your consciousness like this to be missing or to be there when, it's not enough to judge a person just on that basis. The main reason why it is inappropriate, because on the one hand, the two not seeing something, you not seeing something and you seeing something is not there, do not have the same meaning. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Okay, so you say, oh, that person's got no good qualities. But just because they don't appear to you doesn't mean they're not there. You don't see the good quality, but doesn't mean that you actually see that it's not there. It doesn't mean you actually realize it's not there. But they don't have the same meaning. They have diverse meanings. And you seeing something and you seeing with something with a valocognizer do not have the same meaning. They have diverse meanings. Yeah, so you seeing the fault and you seeing the fault with a valocognizer, they're two different things too. So the verse is established. So that's the one about, you don't see a good quality and the person may have that good quality, but just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there, right? The verse is established because you not seeing it because you lack the wit that would enable you to see it as it is. Yeah, so the person might be a bodhisattva, but you can't tell what a bodhisattva is because you're not a bodhisattva yourself, or I'm not a bodhisattva myself. I don't have the sort of clairvoyance that good meditation and concentration might bring, and I don't know bodhisattva. So how can I tell what an actual bodhisattva is? They're a bit more advanced than my capacity is able to handle and be verified. Verify. So you lack the wit. You don't see it because you lack the wit. You lack the level of understanding that would enable you to see it as it is. Like that kind of discrimination, fine discrimination. Yeah. And you seeing it with a valocognizer that it is not there, they don't have the same meaning. So you're not seeing it, that's just appearance to your defective mind. And you seeing with a valocognizer that it's not there, and then if you see with a valocognizer it's not there, yes, then definitely that person doesn't have that good quality. But you don't confuse those two, you see, which we might tend to do. Dismissively, that person's not got any good qualities. Why do I have to be nice to them? Or, why do I have to them? And so forth. For example, so this is where the flesh eater thing comes in. Just as in the case of a person of whom the flesh eater in the space in front is beyond their ken, okay, then that person is wondering whether there's a flesh eater there or not. If you ask them, is there a flesh eater there or not, you get them to wonder, get them to, is there a flesh eater in the place in front or not? But they don't know. They can only doubt, is there one there? Or is there not one there? They can't say. So it's impossible for them to decide that there is no flesh eater in the place in front. Same with somebody's good qualities. Yeah. Because it's beyond your ken, then you know, does that have this person have this good quality? Do they not? You know, it's actually impossible for you to decide if you are not sort of, you know, some advanced level being. So that's not seeing a good quality, and then the other one is seeing a fault. The second is established because, you know, this is the fault one. You see a fault, but is that just because you are, you know, kind of too eager to see faults in people, because that's your kind of, you know, bad habit and kind of, you know, mistaken habit. The second is established because the two, you seeing under the sway of confusion, mistaken seeing, and you seeing under the sway of a valakagnizer do not have the same meaning. You see a fault appears to you, and that's because, you know, you're under the sway of your own, you know, your own kind of self-cherishing and, you know, kind of, you know, pride and so forth. And then if you see things with a valakagnizer, then you might see that person really does, you know, not have that fault that you're imputing to them. So this is the kind of the little message of these correct non-revelation sides of non-appearing, how they actually are important, you know, and you kind of, you know, consider your own reactions to things. Okay, so anybody got any questions on that? I know it's a bit complicated and unfamiliar, flesh eaters and all that, and you know, object designated as the predicate of negandum and all that. But we've got to do at least have a little look at it.
You're giving examples of, okay, you know, like, for example, would emptiness beyond my ken? I would say yes. Or make it easier, let's say Chinese language. It might be now beyond my ken. But if I learn it a little bit, it might not be anymore. So
yeah,
where do you discriminate what is beyond your ken and not?
Well, language could be an example, you know, if somebody speaks a language, you know, can you be sure it's Chinese? What language are they speaking? You know, if you listen to Chinese people and have Chinese friends and you just listen to them speaking Chinese, eventually you hear what Chinese sounds like, even if you have no idea what they're actually saying, but the sounds become familiar. But then how can you discriminate Chinese from Vietnamese or Chinese from some other similar language? But assuming Chinese is a single language, actually, there are probably very different kinds of Chinese. So, you know, what's the boundary between Chinese and non-Chinese language? I don't know, because it's such a big, huge country, isn't it? There are so many people speaking different types of Chinese, Cantonese, and all this, you know. So, but yeah, you could take a language like that, you know, Chinese or something a bit more, a bit less kind of, you know, spoken by not such a huge number of people. Welsh, the Welsh language. Somebody speaking Welsh, you know, would you be able to tell? You wouldn't have a clue, probably. Well, have you got some Welsh friends?
And this one is where the demarcation is. It's the demarcation that I can realize it's not what it is, you know? It's where the exact demarcation line where it says, okay, it now appears and otherwise it doesn't appear. It can only appear if I can realize it, or no.
Yeah, well, that's the criteria. If somebody's speaking it in this room, somebody speaks a certain language, and can you identify which language they're speaking? And if it was Welsh, I guess you couldn't. Could you?
No.
Well, you know, there's no other clues. Like, you know, somebody might be, you know, dressed in a T-shirt with a Welsh flag on it or something. So, maybe he's speaking Welsh. Or he's standing up in the middle of the Welsh Parliament or something, you know, because they have their own council or parliament or something, and he's speaking, you know, he's either going to be speaking English or Welsh, and if it's not English, it's going to be Welsh. But there's no background clues, They just hear that somebody presses the, somebody starts speaking, what language are they speaking? So it's beyond your ability to understand, beyond your ability to know. But do you know that the Welsh language exists? You're not sure if the Welsh language exists?
I would say, I don't know. I cannot say yes or no.
Yeah, well, you are German, I suppose. Why should you know whether there is such a thing? There is such a thing as a Welsh language, actually. But maybe you wouldn't.
No, I would say it could be just a dialect, it could be full English. I don't know.
Yeah, so for you, I mean, I would say I'm pretty convinced there is a Welsh language. I've heard people speaking it, and not very often. It's a minority language these days. But that's the question. That's another question that comes up. In one specific situation, you have no idea. Like the person, is there a flesh eater there or not? You can't say. But does New York exist? Sindhu,
Seems so.
have you been there?
Would be, no.
So you haven't got a direct Vallecanizer. You've never had a direct Vallecanizer of New York.
No, I didn't have a diagnosis of what my neighbor is.
Well, step by step. So that means you will realize the existence of New York through your inferential cognizer. So what's the inference? New York exists because
people talking about it, you hear news about it, just I think right now.
So there's a pervasiveness. If you hear a lot of people talking about it, it necessarily exists. Yeah. So what's the dividing line? Yes, your dividing line, man, dividing line. If you just hear a lot of people talking about it, that doesn't necessarily mean it exists. So what's the criteria? So you're saying you've got a Vallecanizer of New York. So then it becomes, interesting. So how do you know that New York? How do you know the Earth goes around the sun? Do you know the Earth goes around the sun? Do we know the Earth goes around the sun? We accept it. I would say we accept it, but do we know it? And if we do know it, we don't know it by a direct perception. We see the sun coming up. Looks like the sun goes around the Earth, doesn't it? You're just asking what it looks like. The sun comes up and goes down. So the sun is doing the business, and the Earth is in the middle. But no, the Earth goes around the sun, because Aristotle says so, or somebody. No, not Aristotle. He thought it the other way around. Galileo, that's right. So what do we do? Do we know it? What do you think, Tim? Does the Earth go around the sun?
No, I accept it. I've been taught it from a very small age by people I trust, and I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary to make me doubt it. But I couldn't prove it myself mathematically.
Do you have any doubts? You don't have any doubts?
I don't, to be honest. No, I'm I'm prepared to accept it, and it's it seems to work for me, that one. I'm aware that the Earth is curved, and I've seen the curvature of the Earth with my own eyes from a tall building. So I'm comfortable with the idea of the Earth is a sphere and going around the sun.
So if you have no doubts, that means you've realised it then.
Yeah, I suppose there's well, I have nothing to make me doubt it anyway. So there are some things I would hold less securely than this, but so I've not proved it for myself.
Yeah, so that's interesting question. And so, well, everything you realise, or you think you know, but then you ask how you know it.
Yeah.
It seems to come down to the idea that people are telling you.
To a certain extent, that's true. I mean, you have to sort of decide who you will trust. If you had to prove everything in life, you'd be doubting practically everything, and that people generally accept is the sum of human knowledge. Sort of, pretty much, you could have to prove all the science going back from basics and every part of it. It would make life quite difficult and tricky. When I get on a plane, well, I have been on a plane to New York, and I was quite confident it existed before I got on the plane. If I'd had a doubt that New York existed, I wouldn't have got on the plane.
Yeah, but maybe the place you got to, they just changed all the street signs, you know, because they knew you were coming. Actually, it was Pennsylvania.
These people are crafty.
They switched all the road signs around just to fool you. How do you?
While that may be a possibility, I can say it's a remote possibility, and New York existing, I suspect, is more likely.
And that you actually went there, you know, you weren't tricked.
Yeah.
It was New York when you got there.
Yeah.
So it does raise issues, this, you see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, we sort of we do take so much of our things on trust. It's a way of coping in the world. I mean, if we had to doubt everything, try to prove everything for ourselves, we'd have to spend all our time doing that, and it'd be very difficult to get on with normal life.
Yeah, but we still got a valid cognizer. Yeah, we can say it's a assumption. Oh, you know, we'll believe that, and then, you know, it'll be all right. Like, you know, that could still be just a correct assumption, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, sort of I went to New York. I assumed it was a valid cognizer, but you said they could have switched all the signs, and it's difficult to prove that you aren't being tricked in some cases.
Well, I think that'd be well nigh impossible to change all the signs around.
Yeah, it would be tricky.
Well, you know, you could have injected with some drug that just made you dream you're going to New York instead of actually going, you know.
Yeah, no, it's sort of difficult.
Which is, right, again, very unlikely, but
Dreams and waking life, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. I remember once having a dream that I had to give a presentation, and I wasn't sure for 2 or 3 days whether this was a dream or not, and I was quite worried about preparing this presentation, and realised that it was actually only a dream, which is a great relief.
yeah, so that does come up, you know. There's a few little debates in that book. I haven't really had time to prepare them, but maybe we'll try and do that for next time.
Okay.
But anybody else got any questions? Any more questions?
Could we say, that this fact about New York would be some kind of conviction, like an inference based on conviction, because journalists and scientists say so, that they've seen New York on TV, or some kind of some kind of inference and conviction, something like this, mix.
Yeah, what I would usually call those correct sign of belief. Yeah. So correct signs are divided. Correct sign inferential. Correct inference is divided. How many are there?
3.
What are the 3?
Grounding on the fact.
Yeah. Inference by the power of the fact.
And commonly renowned.
Inference by the power of renown.
Yeah. And this one is the conviction.
Yeah. So that's inference of belief.
Belief.
Yeah. So factual ones, you know, sound is impermanent because it's a product. Yeah. So it's just it's a slightly hidden phenomenon, impermanence. So we ought to be able to get it out with, you know, with the correct reasoning, and when we meditate on the reasoning, think about it carefully, then you know, this get at this slightly hidden phenomena. If it's a deeply hidden phenomena, very hidden phenomena, then, you know, just an inference by the power of fact, it may not be able to get at it, you know. So then there's the other type of correct sign of belief, but it is a correct valid cognizer. It's not just a you know, oh, I'll assume that's true because I believe it, you know, I want to believe it, it fits with everything I know or something. But it is supposed to be a correct Balakanizer. So how does it work then?
We have to investigate who gives the reporting about New York, you know, fake source or not, or things like this, maybe that contradict themselves.
Yeah, so you hear so many kind of reports about the place, you know, and you don't hear any about like disproving those eyewitness accounts, you know. Tim says he went there, or like the Earth going around the sun, which is even more, a bit more hard to. Somebody who's never been to New York yet, it's just sort of a hidden phenomena. But you know, the Earth going around the sun, there's a lot less people who can say that that's true from their own, you know, calculations and knowledge, you know, because that's much more of a sort of, you know, scientific fact, which you have to be expert in mathematics and the use of telescopes or something to really verify for yourself. But still, we can come to the conclusion that it would be ridiculous to doubt it. You know? But the dividing line, you know, between being sure of something that actually is true and sure of something and it isn't true, actually, this can be, you know, it's hard to draw, hard to say. Yeah, so this is definitely an issue that these sides bring up actually in the debate about those. But I thought we'd just go back to this idea of negative phenomena. Of course, all these signs depend on negative phenomena. So we should understand what a negative phenomenon is. But maybe we should just read the examples of the correct non-observation sign first. Maybe we should look at the negative form first. Well, let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the definition of a correct sign, a correct non-observation sign. So that's on page 19. Correct non-observation sign. There are two definitions, divisions, yeah, page 19. So it is a correct sign in the proof of that. And also there exists a common base of it being held as the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of that by the sign of it and being negative phenomena. Yeah, so it's a predicate of the probandum is going to be negative. But then, you know, what does it actually mean to be a negative phenomena? So that's some question that if you've done a bit of debating, you know, a bit of collected topics, that comes up, but it doesn't come up in, you know, the sort of the introductory volume, and it doesn't really come up in the second volume, middling topics, except I just extracted the definitions from Burbidge's text and put them in my translation of middling topics, but I didn't go through the whole chapter of negatives because it gets a bit complicated, and Burbidge's debates were a bit sort of, you know, not really getting to the point of the meaning, but just sort of playing about with the words a bit. So I didn't really go and get that whole chapter sorted out. But here I've just got no debates, but just some definitions. So if you scroll down on the same document, then so this is no longer from the IBD sort of debating, you know, science and reasoning book. This is just from different sources. So these definitions here seem to be about the clearest, and these are by Jamyang Shepa. So he's the textbook writer from Drepung Gomang. So Geoffrey Hopkins has done his translation of his collected topics, and he's done this chapter anyway. So you can get from Geoffrey Hopkins's Uma Tibet website, you can get all these sort of debates that are, you know, written by Jamyang Shepa, or the I'm not sure if it's Jamyang Shepa, but the person who wrote their debating textbooks for beginners in Drepung Gomang College. So the definition of a negative exists. So that's like we say negative phenomena, but negative, you don't, in Tibetan, there's no word for phenomena. Negative, if it's a negative, it necessarily exists, right? If it's a positive, it necessarily exists. So I think that's like, if it exists, it has to be either a negative or a positive. So you work out what a positive is from just contrasting it with this definition of negative. So the definition of a negative phenomenon exists because a phenomenon that must be realized upon the explicit elimination of its object of negation by the awareness explicitly realizing it. Yeah, so we haven't got any examples at the moment, because the examples will come in when we get to you know, the divisions. Yeah, so that's the point. You've got to like explicitly eliminate something in order to realize the phenomena. Let me just say like non-pot or something. Yeah, non-pot. So to realize non-pot, you've got to realize you know, there's no pot in this room, like, you know, non-pot, absence of a pot. So you got to think, you know what a pot is, and then think to yourself, is there a pot here or not? And then you say, no, if you know, there isn't one here. So then, you know, you're aware of non-pot or absence of pot or something, non-existence of pot in this room, say, or, you know, on this table, whatever it is. Yeah, so you have to bring something to mind, and then by negating it, then the object that is the negative then can appear. But it can only appear through that route of explicitly, you know, eliminating something, you know, explicitly negating something, you know, that isn't there, sort of thing. Yeah, so I hope that's that gives you something to think about. So when it's divided, there are two: affirming negative and non-affirming negative. So these are sort of defined in a slightly different way, in that, you know, you can see how instead of the awareness, it says the term expressing it. So affirming negative, non-affirming negative, it doesn't say the awareness or the conception realizing it. They say talk about the term expressing it. So I'm going the division into two then: affirming negative, non-affirming negative. And affirming negative exists because a negative whose term expressing it projects another phenomena, either an affirming negative or a positive, in place of its object of negation. Yeah, so it's got to project another phenomena. It's got to, you know, like by refuting the object being refuted, then still there's another phenomena that comes to mind, either an affirming negative or a positive, in place of the object negated. So the examples here is like pot is not permanent. The corpulent Devadatta does not eat during the day. Reversed for not being the sound of water. Selfless is existent, placed without a pot. Buddha whose life is limitless. Empty wallet. I'm going to put permanent in there. I think that's the question that was it Jakob asked last time we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think I put permanent in that list. Yeah, pod is not permanent. Yeah, so in expressing pod is not permanent, I guess, you know, what does it imply? You know, it implies that pod is impermanent, right? By saying it's not permanent, then you're implying it's impermanent. Because it's got to be one of the two, pottery. It's got to be either permanent or impermanent. Yeah, so if you refute, you know, permanent on pot, you know, it means that you are, you know, you are realizing that pot is impermanent. So impermanent pot is kind of, you know, projected. So some of these are a bit tricky, actually. Next one, corpulent Devadatta does not eat during the day. The fat Devadatta does not eat during the day. So that's supposed to imply that it eats at night, you see. That's the common argument. If he's fat and he doesn't eat during the day, then I must eat it during, you know, he must eat during the night. Yeah, I mean, okay, he's got problems with his glands or something, you know. He's got sort of a weird body that, you know, he looks very fat even though he doesn't eat very much. But if he didn't eat at all, then even if he had some sort of body with some sort of physical disability, which, you know, makes him look very fat very easily, you know, I don't know, bad circulation or something, or you know, what do they call it when water collects in your legs or something? What do they call that? Oedemia or something. Yeah. Because it is a disease, isn't it? Your legs just swell up because the water doesn't, you know, the water collects in your limbs or something. But eventually, if you don't eat at all, you must start looking really thin, even if your legs get temporarily swollen up by, you know, this water disease thing. So he is fat, he's corpulent, he is fat, and he doesn't eat during the day means it implies that he eats during the night. So that's implicit kind of, you know, projection of another phenomenon. Is that convincing? You know, if you just said Devadatta does not eat during the day, that's different. Yeah, that's not implying that he eats at night. It doesn't eat during the day. You know, he might be on a fast, and he might be getting thinner and thinner and thinner. But for a while, he wouldn't just die just because he didn't eat for one day. So it doesn't eat during the day. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that doesn't project that he eats during the night. But if he's fat and he doesn't eat during the day. So that's an affirming negative. It's projecting something, you see, and reversed from not being the sound of water. So what does that project? It projects the sound of water. So that if you negate the sound of water and then negate that negation, two negatives will make a positive. So you're back to the sound of water. Selfless is existent. These examples are coming. I think they got the examples from Kelsey Wamo, you know, when she taught collected topics. She's got this list of things. Selfless is existent. Selfless is a non-affirming negative. Yeah, selflessness on its own. Selflessness exists. Yeah. So what does that imply? What phenomena? What is its objective negation? I don't know. Self. In order to realize selfless, you have to negate self. Selflessness, you'd have to negate self. So that's your negation. Selflessness is existent, but somehow in place of selfless, negative of its term expressing it projects another phenomena. For sure, I don't know. Think about that one. A place without a pot. A place without a pot. So to realize place without a pot, you have to think, is there a pot there? You say no. So then a place without a pot has to appear to you. Yeah, so that's, you know, a treeless plain, you know, a plain without any trees, but the plain has to be there. And this one, Buddha whose life is limitless, that's supposed to be a non-affirming negative, see? That's Amitabha, so that's the literal meaning of Amitabha, Buddha whose life is limitless, Buddha of limitless life.
They have a debate in the Sedura about that.
About what?
The first debate on negations, and the Sedura and Gomon, and the giraffe from Gomon, the first debate is on that.
Yeah, but the conclusion is that it's a non-affirming negative. Yeah, that came from Gomon, not from Ani Kasawama. An empty wallet. Okay, so you have to think of money. Is there anything in the wallet, money or keys or something? Nothing in there. So you negate, you know, anything that's in the wallet, but then you remain wallet. Wallet is the object projected. It doesn't have anything in it. And permanent, yeah, common likes of being phenomenal, non-momentary. So to realize it, you have to, you know, put away from your mind momentary, but then that's a quality possessed by, you know, permanent. So something's there, you know, you say, you know, permanent phenomena, permanent. So you are negating something, you're not negating impermanent, but you're not left with a blank. You're left with something there, which is the permanent phenomenon. So maybe they become clear if you just contrast it with the non-affirming negative. So non-affirming negative exists because a negative whose term expressing it does not project another phenomena, either an affirming negative or a positive, in place of the negation of its object of negation. So like no pillar, lack of elephant. Yeah, so you say you negate pillar, but you know there's no idea of something else is going to appear instead of the pillar, which is either an affirming negative or a positive. You can say when no pillar is negated, there's no pillar in this room or something. Well, there is a pillar. But... Yes, you can see it on the picture. There's a pillar. The London Monastery, a pillar.
Yeah. Does it function?
Yes, supporting a beam. No pillar on my head then, no pillar on my head. Yeah. So you bring pillar to mind. But there's nothing like, just when you say no pillar, then there's nothing else has to appear to mind in place of the pillar. Or your non-pillar appears. If you negate pillar, then that implies no pillar. Non-pillar, but non-pillar is not an affirming negative or a positive. It's got to be one of those two. If you negate pillar, then nothing comes to mind. You see, it's like blank. That's like more like emptiness. Lack of elephant. So then, you know, that's not implying something else like tiger or horse or something. And empty of the two, thing impermanent. Yeah, it's just empty. That's just kind of emptiness, like emptying of inherent existence. Yeah. Rabbit horn is empty of the two, thing impermanent. Non-existence of heat. Does that imply cold? Implicitly? But according to this, anyway, according to Andrzej Kesa-Wambach, doesn't it? Non-existence of heat. The term expressing it does not project another phenomena. So the term non-existence of heat doesn't project cold. So that's the idea. Selflessness, you know, and non-inherent existence. That's another one. See, the thing you're negating doesn't have to exist. No inherent existence. So you're not implying that it's that it exists, you know, because a rabbit horn is empty of inherent existence.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we say we have to say a phenomenon explicitly, like a phenomenon which is a non-thing. If we just say non-thing, it could be like horn of the rabbit is not a thing, it's a non-thing.
Yes,
So
horn of the rabbit is nothing.
So does it mean that a negation can be a non-existent as well?
The thing you're negating can be non-existent. Yeah. So no inherent existence. That's the non-affirming negative. So you negate inherent existence, and then your mind can absorb into that sheer absence. But you're negating something that doesn't exist anyway.
Non-existent itself is not a negative.
Why not?
It's because it's non-existent.
So non-existence doesn't exist. Okay, non-existence is non-existent, but non-existence of a horn and a rabbit exists.
Yeah.
So non-existence of a horn and a rabbit does exist. So non-existence does exist because it exists on the horn of a rabbit. So how do you, there is a value cognizer seeing horn of rabbit to be non-existent.
Being non-existent.
There's a value cognizer realizing that horn of a rabbit is non-existent. So there's a value cognizer realizing non-existence because there's a value cognizer realizing Horn of a rabbit, you mean non-existent? Yeah, so that's at least it's not on the it's not on this list. So non-existent of a horn of a rabbit, non-affirming negative. Non-existent of heat is a non-affirming negative, and so on. So, and let's just finish the last one. There is reality in the sense of ultimate reality. So even though it doesn't look like a negative, you know, it itself, the definiendum, whatever you want to call it, the word expressing it, it doesn't have to be kind of, you know, explicitly have a negative kind of bit to it, like no or absence of or lacking or something. But still the meaning of reality, or this chunyi or something in Tibetan, is of no inherent existence, you see. So the meaning of it, what the meaning of it is the meaning of it a negative thing, a non-affirming negative. Not just the word that captures it, you know, but look at the meaning. Don't look at just how the word looks. You have to decide whether it's negative or not, going by the meaning, not by just the appearance of the definiendum or the word which expresses it. Because when you hear the word, how does it appear to your mind? If somebody says to you chunyi, you know, which means reality, or, you know, if you say to make it more clear, ultimate reality, it has to appear as that sheer absence of inherent existence. So when the word ultimate reality, you hear it, if you know what it means, then it's supposed to appear as a non-affirming negative, you see, even if the word doesn't have any negative, like, I don't know, connection, negative bit expressing it to be a negative. So that's the end of the list.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Non-pot.
Hmm.
Non-affirming negation.
Yeah.
I say non-pot is an affirming negation because it affirms that there are things that are non-pots.
It affirms that non-pot exists.
Non-pot is an affirming negation because it suggests that there are things that exist that are not pots.
Well, you said this is not a pot. So you have to bring the idea of pot to mind in order to say this, you know, this other thing, you know, this is not a pot or something, or this, you know, my hand is not a pot. So you have to know what a pot is. But if you say this, my hand is not a rabbit horn, it doesn't mean that the rabbit horn has to exist, does it?
Right.
So, you know, say non-pot doesn't guarantee that there is such a thing as a pot, does it? Because non-rabbit horn doesn't guarantee that there is such a thing as a rabbit horn. If rabbit horn did exist, then we can know it looks like the thing in Tim's picture. But it doesn't, just by saying non-rabbit horn doesn't mean that there's got to be a rabbit horn. But just you have to be able to picture what it would be if it did exist. And then you can say, oh no, my hand isn't a rabbit horn, of course not. And so the same with pot, you know, just saying non-pot doesn't necessarily commit to saying there is such a thing as a pot that does exist.
If we have a valid cognition that pot exists, and then that for that same person who's realised pot, and realises non-pot, doesn't for that person he realises that there are things that are non-pots. So he realises there is something which is non-pot. So realising non-pot, he realises there is something in its place.
Yeah, but the definition, you see, is like, if it's a non-affirming negative, it's a negative as term expressing it does not project another phenomena. So then we got no pillar or non-pot. So not implying that there is anything there, you're just saying non-pot. So what comes to your mind? Well, all you can say is, well, you bring pot to mind and say, oh, it's not there, or this isn't one of them, this isn't a pot, you know, non-pot. So it doesn't, you don't really say, and, you know, by the side of my experience of non-pot, then there's got to be a pot hanging around somewhere in the other, part of complete the mental picture. If you just say, oh, non-pot, or this is not a pot, then pot disappears from your kind of mental picture. And it doesn't have to be existing somewhere else, does it? So the word non-pot doesn't sort of project pot in another place, does it? The negative, whose term expressing it, does not project another phenomenon. Or just a general definition of negative by this author. A phenomenon that must be realized upon the explicit elimination of its object of negation by the awareness explicitly realizing it, you see. So to realize non-pot, you have to eliminate pot, but it isn't committed to there being a pot somewhere else.
No, it suggests that there are things that are not pots.
Well, maybe, but there's that actual, that realize that actual you're explicitly negating pot, whether pot exists or not. You can negate something that doesn't exist, just like you can negate something that does exist. So the awareness and realizing non-pot, doesn't have to have pot kind of, as one of its objects of awareness as well. So whether pot exists or not isn't the question, but it's just whether this thing is a pot or not. Non-pot, like you're just left with the absence of pot, whatever. And that's your non-affirming negative. Privately, you might know that there are such things as pot in different places, but that's not part of this realization. That's something extra, something different. Yeah, but there are quite a few debates to have about this. And, I'm just trying to sharpen up my own understanding. I've forgotten everything now. But we better stop there. We're getting late. So thanks for listening. I don't know if we've advanced our understanding very much. But we tried.
Thank you.
So there's a lot more to say about these non-affirming negatives and these non-observation signs. So yeah, bit by bit. So hopefully after this little break when I'm away for a month, then we'll be able to continue. So it's worth at least sort of getting an understanding of non-observation signs, completing the 3 types of correct sign. Okay, thanks for listening. Yeah, good audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Right.
And safe travels, Geshe-la. Thank you.
Have a good retreat.
Oh, yeah, for tuning in. Yeah. Okay then. Good night.